The real drama of Outlander never unfolded in front of the cameras. It unfolded quietly, behind closed doors, when one actor became untouchable and everyone else learned where they stood. Richard Rankin has finally said what many only dared to whisper. And once you hear it, it becomes impossible to watch Outlander the same way again. For years, the series carefully projected the image of a perfectly balanced ensemble, a tight-knit family bound by passion, respect, and creative unity. Fans were encouraged to believe every actor stood on equal footing, that every performance carried the same weight, and that success was shared evenly behind the scenes. According to Rankin, that image was never the whole truth. Not even close. What he revealed slices straight through the polished illusion created by friendly interviews and smiling cast photos. Behind the scenes, Outlander operated under a hierarchy so rigid it barely needed to be spoken aloud. One actor wasn't merely favored. He was depended on, protected, and relentlessly pushed in ways no one else experienced. Sam Heughan, the face of Outlander, wasn't treated simply as the lead, he became the axis the entire production revolved around. Rankin didn't speak with anger or accusation, and that restraint is what makes his words so unsettling. He described a set where favoritism wasn't explosive or obvious, but systematic. Decisions quietly shifted to accommodate Sam. Schedules bent around his availability. Scripts were shaped with his endurance in mind. And when pressure mounted, it wasn't shared. It was concentrated almost entirely on him. At first glance, favoritism sounds like privilege. Rankin's account suggests something far more troubling. Sam wasn't just favored, he was expected to carry everything. The emotional weight, the physical exhaustion, the relentless screen time. While others rotated in and out of intensity, Sam was pushed forward again and again, praised for never faltering, never slowing down, never refusing. Directors admired his stamina, his discipline, his ability to deliver under extreme pressure. But admiration quietly morphed into dependence. And dependence became exploitation, disguised as trust. When scenes didn't land, the solution wasn't rewriting or rethinking, it was demanding more from Sam. More emotion, more pain, more sacrifice, because he always delivered. Meanwhile, the rest of the cast learned to adjust. Scenes tilted toward a single center. Character arcs subtly shrank or shifted. Not because others lacked talent, but because the show had quietly decided who mattered most. And questioning that system, at least in Rankin's telling, was never encouraged. What makes his revelation hit so hard is that it doesn't cast Sam Heughan as the villain. If anything, it exposes how destructive favoritism can be for everyone involved. Being treated like an acting machine strips away humanity. Dedication turns into obligation. Success turns into expectation. And once that line is crossed, limits no longer exist. Fans often celebrate actors who give everything to a role. But Rankin's words force an uncomfortable question into the open. When does giving everything stop being a choice and start becoming a requirement? When does praise transform into pressure? And how much silence is required to keep the illusion intact? This is the side of Outlander no behind-the-scenes special ever showed. Not a scandal built on shouting or betrayal, but a slow, quiet imbalance that shaped the series from within. And now that Rankin has pulled back the curtain, one thing becomes clear: the most intense performance on Outlander may have been happening off-screen all along. No one expected this to come from Richard Rankin. Not fans, not insiders, and certainly not those invested in maintaining the image of Outlander as one big, happy, perfectly balanced family. But once the words were spoken, there was no taking them back. Because what Rankin revealed didn't merely hint at tension. It exposed a power dynamic many suspected but few were willing to name. Behind the kilts, the camaraderie, and the carefully curated interviews, Outlander was never as equal as it appeared. And at the center of that imbalance stood Sam Heughan, praised, protected, prioritized, while others quietly adapted to a system that revolved almost entirely around him. According to Rankin, the favoritism wasn't subtle. It wasn't accidental. And it certainly wasn't harmless. From the earliest seasons, the message was unmistakable. Sam wasn't just the lead. He was the engine, the face, the brand. More disturbingly, he was treated less like a collaborator and more like a high-performance machine built to carry the entire series on his back. Scripts bent around him, schedules reorganized for him, creative decisions filtered through one question first: how does this serve Sam? Rankin's words carry weight because of who he is. He isn't a disgruntled outsider. He isn't a former cast member searching for relevance. He's someone who stood inside that world season after season, watching how power flowed, and where it stopped. What made the situation even more unsettling was how normalized it became. Directors openly praised Sam's endurance and discipline, his ability to push through take after take without complaint. But praise crossed a line. Admiration became expectation. Expectation became pressure. And pressure turned Sam into something dangerously close to a tool. Rankin described moments when Sam was pushed far beyond what others would have been asked to endure. Longer days, emotionally brutal scenes stacked back to back, physical demands that should have justified pauses or rewrites. But there were none, because stopping the machine was never considered an option. What fans never saw was how this reshaped the rest of the cast. Scenes that should have been shared became unbalanced. Emotional journeys meant for multiple characters were quietly redirected. Actors learned quickly that challenging the hierarchy wasn't welcome. Importantly, Rankin never suggested Sam asked for this treatment. If anything, his tone carried a sense of sympathy for someone trapped by his own indispensability. Because being favored doesn't always mean being protected. Sometimes it means being exploited in plain sight, disguised as trust. Directors leaned on Sam with an intensity that bordered on obsession. If something failed, they demanded more from him. And every time he delivered, it reinforced the cycle. Over time, an unspoken rule settled over the set. Everything could bend, except Sam. For Rankin, witnessing this wasn't upsetting because Sam didn't deserve recognition, but because the imbalance distorted the entire creative environment. A show built on themes of love, partnership, and equality was quietly operating on favoritism and dependency. And no one talked about it. Not publicly, not honestly, because in television, hierarchy is rarely questioned when success is guaranteed. Outlander was a global phenomenon. Ratings were strong. The fandom was devoted. Any discomfort was dismissed as the cost of success. But Rankin's words fractured that illusion. He described how the creative fixation on Sam reduced others to orbiting figures, not deliberately cruel, just increasingly invisible. And invisibility, over time, causes its own kind of damage. What's most striking is how carefully this reality was hidden from the public. Press tours celebrated ensemble chemistry. Interviews framed Sam as humble, tireless, endlessly grateful. And while that may all be true, it didn't erase what was happening behind the scenes. Sam wasn't just trusted, he was relied upon to an unhealthy degree. Rankin hinted that he was seen less as a person and more as a guarantee, a performer who could be pushed endlessly because he never failed. That is where admiration becomes exploitation. Because when someone never says no, the industry stops asking whether it should. Fans romanticize dedication. They celebrate sacrifice. But Rankin's revelation demands a harder question: at what cost? When one actor is elevated to near-mythic status, everyone else is quietly diminished. And when a production is built around a single acting machine, collaboration gives way to extraction. This is the side of Outlander no one wanted to confront. Not the love story, not the fandom, but the uncomfortable truth that success was sustained by imbalance and silence. And now, that silence has finally been broken.